Hello and welcome to Actions to Wealth UK with me, Ash Bull. I am taking you through this week's analysis, which will actually be this month's analysis. So we can get prepared for what we are expecting for the month. Just having a look through the charts before coming on air, I see that it probably will be a trickier month potentially to navigate. Depends on what we end up trading, but let's have a quick look through as much as we possibly can. First, we start with gold. Seeing there is a initial move to the upside with gold, but ultimately this is starting to look a little bit weaker, and I would actually be looking for downside this month. Some of these I would avoid, generally speaking, and I may well avoid gold, but I would prefer to be on the move to the downside rather than the upside. I'd want to see a move below this particular level on the weekly chart, so even though the monthly suggests a bit of downside, that wouldn't be confirmed until we cross this particular level here, which looks to me like it's going to be around about probably 12:30. I'd like to see a break and a hole beneath on the weekly chart before looking for downside longer term. But I wouldn't really be that interested in upside, even though this is a bounce area. The move on gold will potentially move to the upside, but I'd be a lot more comfortable being on the side of what I'm looking for on the monthly, and maybe later in the month we might start to see this start to break down a little bit more. But it's possible that the sentiment for me may change if we start to cross other levels. Probably need to get above this level before I'd be interested in upside. Looks like we may get caged in here a little bit, so it's possible that we could start looking for downside if we get up to this lower level and see if we will break down from that point. But it's either going to be the upper line or lower line that I'll be looking for. Okay, let's move on to the dollar crosses. We'll look at silver because it will potentially be the same. So dollar crosses, this is why it's possible that it could be a slightly trickier month on some of these currencies, because this is at the Aussie dollar on the monthly, and this is looking pretty bullish right now. We've seen this morning star and well and truly take out the third bar back in this particular sequence. But we are also getting fairly close to a level of resistance here. So the upside will continue on a break and a hold of this particular area here. And it's not that much room when we start to look on the monthly charts. The weekly charts. There's not that much room before we get there if we haven't already got there. So I'll be looking for initially some downside, but ultimately I'd like to buy this one on any kind of throwbacks to the lower levels. Not necessarily looking at this lower line, but as this one comes down a little bit, maybe starting to look for upside, but not necessarily in this area. This looks like maybe a more attractive area to try and hit. We would have to do other analysis on this. This is a very brief overview, but we would have to do other analysis. Where do the moving averages sit? Where do the Fibonacci sit? Where do the pivots sit? But coming back to this level, I think there would probably be some fairly strong buying somewhere around about here or somewhere near the lower line down here. So I'd be looking for longs in the Aussie dollar, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that earlier in the month. Looks like we might start to just ease back to the downside before we get that eventual move back to the upside. Looking at the euro dollar, similar, very similar. So you can see that the dollar may well have a fairly decent period in this month. Not necessarily the start, not necessarily the end, but I would say a pretty decent period. More likely to be towards the start of the month than the end of the month. We'd have to check on when the interest rates next interest rate announcement is going to be, and what other aspects will potentially shape the dollar this month, and see if they are towards the start of the month, because we might just start to see an easing back as we get some idea of which way that the dollar is likely to go longer term. So looking probably for initially some downside, but the monthly chart looks pretty positive, but we are sitting on resistance. The issue with trading to the downside, it's not so much that we are against the overall trend, which the primary trend still is a little bit weak. It's taken out some fairly decent levels, so it does look like it could continue its move to the upside. But the issue with trading to the downside is that this does not suggest downside. So the monthly bar is not a bearish looking bar. So even though we are at resistance, we don't have a resistance, a bar that suggests that we're about to turn around here. So looking for downside, we are effectively counter trend trading on a longer term time frame, which is always going to be fairly dangerous. Shorter term time frames, slightly, it's going to be less so. So I'd prefer to look for the upside in euro dollar, but just not at these particular levels. Same with the dollar Swiss, looking for downside. This one may be a little bit clearer. Let's just check what this lower line suggests. See, that lower line suggests that there's some room to the downside. Again, we are going to have to check our fibs and our pivots and other things that generate the support and resistance levels, but this one looks like it's through, so maybe earlier on this one looks more palatable for a trade to the downside. So certainly looking for some dollar weakness in the medium term, but not necessarily in the shorter term. Dollar yen looks like we are maybe starting to climb to the upside. It's another one. Now the yen is the other cross, which is looking to me like it could be a fairly tricky trade, because the yen is looking pretty weak, but again it is just held itself at levels of potential resistance for the yen, so support for the yen, so resistance against some of the other crosses, but no reversal, no signs and signals of reversal. So this one would have to break through this level and hold just to continue to the upside, but certainly looks stronger than it would weaker. Some of these may just end up being charts that and crosses that we would prefer to avoid. The dollar CAD looks like it's on its way. CAD looking pretty good for some further upside against the dollar. So dollar CAD looking for some further downside. Also looks like it's crossed the downside. That horizontal level looks to me like it's just about being taken out. So any move back to the upside, so any pullback here, probably to the previous horizontal breakout, which looks like it would be around about this level here, would be a very attractive area to try and short this one. So I'll be looking for shorts in this one as well. Pound dollar, if we look at this on the monthly, again it looks like it's taken out some pretty decent levels here. What I like about this is the inverted head and shoulders on this weekly chart. Left shoulder here, head down here, made the head down here, right shoulder here. Again, looks like we're just sitting on a level of potential resistance. So again, any throwbacks, I would be looking to buy. In an uptrend, I call a move back to the downside a throwback. And in a downtrend, a move back to the upside, a pullback. So that's just terminology that I read in a book, and it's just always kind of stuck with me. So throwbacks, I'll be buying, effectively buy the rips and sell the dips. So buy the dips and sell the rips with the dollar. What we got here? So Kiwi dollar. Looks like that one is actually through. So again, looking for moves to the upside, as long as we get some sort of element of retracement. Not a really strong and positive move through there, but it looks to me like we are just about through. So potentially we're going to see just a bit of a sell-off in this Kiwi dollar initially, and then it's just about where we can pick it up back to the upside. Now looking at the Aussie, quite an interesting one. Aussie. I would be looking at this one for a short. When I was looking at this one on the monthly, it's not quite through here. I mean, it's just about managed to recover somewhat back through these levels here. So it did close below, but it's managed to close back above again. This is definitely more than 50% into the previous move to the downside. So not a particularly positive looking bar to try and sell off on. But I would be more interested in downside rather than upside. This looks like a fairly nice hold at the minute. But the way we can play this one, just to kind of give us some confirmation and play it in a safer manner, because this is looking like an inverted head and shoulders. So I could see many people wanting to pick this up to the upside. And we'll keep ourselves well out of the way of any of that kind of price action that's going on, just by waiting for this one to cross the downside, which would give us room to hit this lower level and possibly then beyond. If we look at this monthly chart, possibly then beyond. We may just be a little bit overextended down here, so moves to the upside might well happen, but I would look for a downside if we cross that lower level on the daily. The Kiwi downtrend but monthly support, we got a monthly support and a doji here, so this again looks like we could get an initial push back to the upside before continuing to the downside. So again, might just be that we pick out some of these and pick the direction, but aren't that interested in trading them. So that looks like a level of support. Where will it take us? This looks like an okay level of resistance on just an initial view, just on a very quick view of this. This looks like an initial level of resistance. So looking for that one to push up to that area and seeing what the daily chart will give us on that. If are there signs and signals of reversal around about this area? If so, happy to trade that one and see if I can get that lower line again. Now the Aussie yen is the first case in point for what we're looking at with the yen. Yen certainly looking for downside, so crosses to continue to the upside against the yen, but getting fairly close to levels of resistance here. So nice inverted head and shoulders on this longer term time frame. So this looks really good, but it's just not so palatable here because we are starting to close in on a potential turnaround point. So I think let this one ease back to the upside. Let the Aussie yen ease to the upside. Ease back to the downside, maybe creating another inverted head and shoulders with a left shoulder here, head, and then a right shoulder somewhere around this area, and then see if we can pick that one up again just at a lower level. So interested in Aussie yen long, but not quite yet. So maybe later in the month. Aussie CADs, again, this one's a little bit tricky because I'm seeing downside potential, certainly with the strength of the CAD overall, but limited downside. This bar suggests further downside in this one, and will it get caught up here? So easiest way to play this one, or safest I should say, rather than easiest, safest way to play this one is let it close here first. Let it close below, and then we can see if we're correct, and we can pick this one up to the downside. So looking for Aussie CAD for some shorting. Swiss yen. Maybe I don't need to go through all these of what I'm seeing with these yen crosses because I'm effectively pretty convinced that the yen is going to be a weak currency in the coming months. But again, just kind of like sat on levels that haven't broken through with any certainty as yet. So looking for some upside, but looking for some upside on throwbacks in the Swiss yen. Same with the CAD yen. Maybe it's got slightly more room than some of the others before we actually are likely to hit the brakes on this one. So looking at that level along there, that looks pretty good. So little bit more room here. Looking at on a weekly and a daily, the daily suggests that we do have some fairly nice room up there. But these bars look a little bit like they could start to get a bit overextended. So I'd love to get this one, but I'd still love to see this one to the downside first and then see if I can pick it up on the way back up again, because I think that upper line will be tested. We were in this euro pound, and this euro pound on the monthly, very positive, but this monthly bar does suggest indecision. Now these can go either way, obviously with indecision these can go either way, but when we look at these weekly, it does suggest that certainly earlier on in the picture that we would see a push back to the downside before moving to the upside. The daily chart suggests that I would like to see it down at this point really before looking for upside. So I'd like to see a further moves to the downside with the euro pound and then start to pick it back into the upside. It's a possible trade. Maybe it's going to need to come up just a little bit, and then we can see if we can take it to the downside. Might be an avoid again because trading against the primary trend could just be that little bit more dangerous and unnecessary. Seeing the euro yen also plumbing to the upside again, looks like it's got a little bit of room here. The only as I say, these are very quick looks that I'm seeing on this, but the only levels that I can see on this one would be certainly taking it a little bit higher before coming to the downside. Very strong couple of bars though. Would I want to see another bar that I'd like to trade to the upside? Eventually, yes, but I'd like to see this one come back a bit first. So euro yen would be a long for the month. Euro CAD is probably one that would be high on the avoid list, because even though we are through some of these levels here, that is not an attractive bar to try and get involved in. So it's possible that we might need to see this one come back, create some sort of hammer or maybe even a doji over this month, and then see if there's a trade to the upside. Much more interested in upside, but just not on the current bar. So might be Euro CAD looking more for August than July. If we look at this Euro Aussie, Euro Aussie looks to me like it's come through as well. And again, any moves back to the downside, I'll be interested in it. Not so interested in this particular area. Could see some weakness here. Maybe we're starting to see something of a distribution pattern, but maybe we're starting to see a little bit of weakness there. But I suspect that there will be plenty of bulls anywhere around this area here. So if this one comes back and that particular price level coincides with something that is along a horizontal level as well, so we have two areas of support maybe later in the month, then that would be an area that I would be interested in picking this one to the upside. Euro Swiss I never trade. Too close in their partnership. The Euro Kiwi also looking for upside, but again not one of my favourites charts there. So now we're on to the pound. Now the pound has seen something of a renaissance in the last month or so. Weak looking bar here, but no penetration into this bar of any huge significance. So yes, there's penetration, but it's not too weak. So I'd like to see if this one does have some more room to the upside, and confirmation on this one is going to come if we can break through that level. Can we trade it up to that level first? I think we can. I think that there is certainly signs and signals that this one does continue to ease to the upside. So I'll be looking for some pound Aussie strength. And pound Swissy looks to me like we got some strength as well. Definitely on a level of support down here. So there's some really long-term support down here. Lovely bar as well to try and trade on. So if we're thinking of buyers bars, that is certainly a buyer's bar on the monthly. So I'd like to see whether the daily charts can just hold above specific levels. Looks to me something around about there. So any move back to the downside, which would coincide with a horizontal level along here, maybe then, which isn't that far. Then we could start to look to see if there's any setups on our 4-hour charts. Looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be somewhere around about this area. So maybe back to the lows, possibly. I wouldn't be too interested in buying here, but looking for a long in that pound Swissy. Pound Kiwi again, long on potential pullbacks, and that would be pullbacks on the daily. So as we come back to the downside, I'd like to see this one get picked up again. Pound CAD. Now this one is a huge avoid for me, just because of the strength of the CAD. I'm seeing some strength with the pound, but we might be trying to trade the two prize fighters of July if we try and trade the pound CAD. So yes, certainly looks like initial upside on the weekly. That monthly bar, you see these monthly bars, how they are different to the pound Kiwi, because this penetration is more than 50% into the third bar back, which could suggest more bearish moves. Again, the safest way for me to play this would be an actual break and a hold above these levels on the daily chart. So I wouldn't be completely adverse to trading to the long side, but I'd certainly want to see that break first. I like these bars. I like these two bars here, which do suggest that there is some upside potential. If pound yen comes back, again, I'd be all over it, because I just see that the yen is probably the weakest currency at the minute, and I'm seeing that the pound could actually show some pretty decent signs of strength. So lovely bar last month when it looked like there was going to be a sell-off back to the downside. That didn't happen, and we got a really nice buyer's bar just at a level of resistance here. So any cutbacks and throwbacks just a little bit lower, just a bit overextended. You can see by the bars that there's possibly a bit of exhaustion that could start stepping in. So I'd like to see this one come back, give us a decent pattern on the and set up on the 4-hour, and then I'd like to trade this one to the upside. I could quickly cover the Swissy, the Kiwi pairs, but I'd be looking for longs in this one. Just initially, probably, but might not be something that I would trade. So it's been pretty decent. You can see that the Kiwi has been, it's had a pretty decent time of it. Initially, it looks to me like this Kiwi CAD could move to the downside, but it has had some pretty decent price action. So the only way that I would like to trade this, if I was going to get involved, is a break and a hold below that level, which we got the break, possibly a hold. So actually doesn't look like too bad. A bar for Monday even for some further downside. So we could be looking at Kiwi CAD for some downside at a break of these lows. I have to check our 4 hours our charts for what we would look for with that. Certainly. The Kiwi doesn't buckle that yen trend, so certainly to me again looks like upside. Anything that was to come back a little bit, a V-shaped recovery here, not something I'd like to get involved in just for a little ease to the upside, potentially hit the brakes on this upper level up here, which also looks like an inverted head and shoulders, not a very deep head, so I'm not sure whether that would qualify, but maybe a W bottoming pattern. Certainly looks like an accumulation pattern. So maybe it's going to touch here first before coming back. But if it came back and gave us something probably along that level there, as it kind of gave us another inverted head and shoulders, then I'll be interested for some upside. And finally, this dollar Sing, we're going to quickly look at. Dollar Sing was something that I could potentially trade. It looks to me like, again, an inverted head and shoulders. That it looks okay at these levels, and we do have a level of support here. When we drag this line out, we are on a level of support here. So even though we've had some downside, the downside bars look pretty muted. There was a little bit of a further break, but they look a little bit muted. So the upside has been pushed to the downside. But if we are to see dollar strength, this wouldn't be, in my opinion, the worst choice to try and go for. The safest area would certainly be breaks of upper trend lines along here. But it's possible that we could trade it up to that level. We'll have to see what the charts give us. But I wouldn't mind seeing if this one can move to the upside and possibly break a level of confluence. Again, we need our fibs and pivots. And moving averages just to kind of get some further confirmation of levels of support and resistance. But if this one was able to break these levels, then I'd certainly be interested in upside, and it looks like that upside could be fairly lucrative and a fairly decent move. Otherwise, we do need to respect levels of resistance, so we could be looking for downside in this area. But just from what I'm seeing of that lower end of support on the monthly chart, I'd like to see whether this one was to push higher, and a break of that particular level would get me interested. So slightly longer session today, but I think it's worth doing that on the start of the month. Hope you enjoyed it. And if there's any questions about anything, and there is any coaching that you'd like, I do coaching at 7 o'clock Sing time on a Tuesday for 15 minutes. So you can join me in there into the coaching room, and just speak to James about any details for that. But have a great month, be patient, be vigilant, and I'm sure you'll be profitable. Thanks a lot for listening.